You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowing like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look up better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Manga Muse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 5th part of What If Naruto Enters Winxclub. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Pixel's Fanbook on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Naruto's Cave Althea. Music was playing within Naruto's room as it was, for a better word, a dump. There were dirty, stained, and some of them, torn clothes, oiled stains, and oily tools on the floor. Along with various plastic bottles as well. There were various pages with runes drawn on them scattered around his drawing table with the ink bottles turned over with the contents dried out and brushes on the table itself, unorganized. Various plates and bowls were also on the floor, scattered on the floor with some broken. As for the teen himself, he was currently laying in his bed, hair a bit longer and messier than it usually was, wearing a stained and dirty white t-shirt and a pair of dirty black shorts. He had dark circles under his eyes and his irises were a little dull, lacking the light they were known to have. He looked slightly paler than usual. He had bandages wrapped around his wrists and arms as he was staring up at the rocky ceiling. His phone was next to his head, been there since the call with the girls and he was annoyed. He scoffs at the thought of the call. Checking in on me, asking me if I'm fine. I'm fine, I'm fine. Nothing's wrong with me. Nothing's wrong. Naruto thought. Although he felt that he may have gone overboard on going off on the girls and hung up the call, he didn't need help. He was doing fine. Sighing, he slowly sits up and goes off the bed and walks toward his bike. The engine was open with the Bernoulli converginator opened out in the open. He'd been up for the past few days with little rest, fixing and adding in a few things into the engine. Why? There was the annual day of the Rose Race and he planned to enter and win it. That's why he's been locked in his room for a while, to prep Akira and himself for it, but he really wasn't even feeling hyped for it. As he grabs a few of the tools off from the floor, he began to think back to the girls and how he reacted to them asking about him. Did I do too far with them? No, I didn't. I'm perfectly fine. They shouldn't worry me. In fact, I think they should, just forget about me and live their lives in peace. Since I can't even protect them from harm. Naruto thought, saddened at the thought of seeing his friends, his only friends, live their lives safely without him in it. But that was a necessary sacrifice to do if it meant they'd be happy. As he goes back to tightening the bolts on the Bernoulli converginator, a knock was heard from the entrance to the cave. Naruto might have thought that it was Faragonda again and was about to yell at her when he was greeted by a voice he wasn't expecting to hear so soon. Naruto, it's me. Musa. Can we talk? Musa spoke from outside the door. She had found his cave. Naruto remained still and quiet, hoping that Musa would think that he wasn't there and leave him away. Naruto, I know you're in there. I can see your shadow moving around. Musa spoke. Naruto looks down and saw his shadow was stretched all the way to the door thanks to how the lighting in the room was. He mentally cursed on this. He remains silent as he quietly goes back to working on his bike. Okay. Still ignoring me, I get it. I do really. Musa said, look, can we talk? Naruto remained silent but that apparently didn't stop Musa. Look. I know you said that you're fine, but you're not. You're far from it. I know this because I've heard it before. I'm probably the only one in this school and out of our friends to not that you're not fine because I know what it's like to be hurt and depressed. I know this because, I was there before. Musa admits, causing Naruto to stop working and slowly turn to the door. You're probably thinking to yourself, how? How can Musa, this carefree, party-loving, musical girl go through the same thing? Well, I have. It's a long story but, I'll tell you if you're interested in hearing me out. Musa says. Naruto doesn't answer but she had a feeling he was listening. I come from a family of talented people with music. My dad started as a young musician who wasn't making much money but that didn't bother him at all. One day, he went to a concert held in the city back home, and there, he saw my mom for the first time at her first concert. She was an incredible singer and her voice was heaven to listen to. My dad was awestruck by her voice, so much so that he asked her if she could perform this piece he wrote with him. She was leaving home in a day but she told him that he could come over the next morning. He agreed and went off. He didn't write anything and he had to write the whole piece overnight from scratch. The piece wasn't special and my mom could see that but she could tell that he worked hard on it and that really stuck with her on him. From there, they began to talk more and more with each other and perform together in various concerts and eventually, they fell in love and got married. Over time, money got low and things got rough for them but my dad didn't care as he only wanted to see my mom happy and fulfill her dreams. Over time, they eventually had me. Sure they were poor but they didn't care. They were happy. My dad used to tell me that it was the happiest day of his life. Time passed and my parents were still doing what they loved, performing and playing music. But, one day, that came to stop. During one of their concerts, my mom suddenly got sick and collapsed on stage, causing my DOS to stop playing and rush to her side along with the others there. She got wrote and worse over time as we could barely afford food, let alone medicine. My mom fought the illness and pain back but, it was too late. I watched her die in front of my eyes. There was nothing we could do. Her death affected my dad and me a lot, more so with my dad. He blamed music as it caused his wife to overwork herself and pass away from it. I watched him destroy his prized cello and anything else that was related to music. He's never played a single note since and I became the only thing left in his life. The thing that he loves. I was very traumatized by it, but I fell in love with music. I couldn't help it. I loved how it had the world around me just fade and disappear and it left only me in its world. It's my only escape. My dad found out and he banned music from our house. I got upset, and we began to shout and yell hurtful things at one another until I left. I stayed over at my aunt's for a while to cool down and avoid my father. I got depressed and went with the wrong group for a time. I isolated myself from everyone, felt anxious and helpless. I was annoyed with the world and I was losing interest in the things I love, and that included music. I just felt empty. My aunt and dad saw that I was taking medics to sleep and they got me help. I'm better now and I haven't touched a single med bottle for 3 years now. But, I something still thinks over those things at times. It never really leaves you, it stays in your mind, waiting and seeing when is the right moment to come back. Musa finishes her story. While she was saying her story, she fell to the ground and leans her back onto the wall while facing the door, watching Naruto's shadow as she saw it move a bit while she spoke. Naruto was in shock. He had no idea that Musa was like this in the past and that her past was so tragic. He didn't know what to do or what to say. He hears Musa sigh. Look, Naruto, what I'm trying to say is, you may think what happened that night is your fault, and that you must have failed in protecting your friends and you're beating yourself over it. What I'm saying is, it's not. It never was. You haven't failed anyone. This was an accident. Me getting hurt was an accident. Naruto. Musa says as she crawls her way to the door and looks down. You have friends and family. People who truly care and love you for who you are, and they are worried about you. This is scaring them. It's scaring me. I know I've gone through the same thing but I don't truly know how you're feeling right now. You might be hurt, exhausted, frightened, and empty, and you can only see that you have to be alone to deal with this. But you don't have to be. We're here for you. we have and we're not going to leave you, not now, and not ever. You may have lost your old memories and you might never know if they'll return. But that doesn't matter right now, you can create new ones, with us. Your family and friends. I'm here, Naruto. Musa says as she places her hand on the door, and I'm not going to leave your side. Ever. She saw the shadow move a bit, but what she wasn't aware of was that Naruto was by the door as well, on his knees, and had his hand on it as well, right on the spot where her hand was, as if they were trying to hold hands but the door was perverting them. The light in Naruto's eyes had returned and tears were treading down his face. He was upset with himself that he was doing too, and was hurting the people who were there for him when no one else was, and the people who accepted him and became friends with him. What am I doing? Naruto thought, his mind was starting to get clear. Look, I've said what I wanted to say and that's it. If you still don't want to talk, I understand, I won't push you to respond to me. I'll leave you alone for now. If you want to talk, I'll be here. Musa says. She takes her hand off the door and stands up, and turns to leave. She was about to when she heard the door suddenly open. She turns around and sees Naruto standing there, head down with his tears falling as he starts to shake. I'm a Musa. Naruto stammers, trying to find the words to say, but Musa knows. She goes to him and hugs him, not even bothered by the stains on him. Shoo, sh. It's okay, let it out, let it all out. I'm here. Musa says, rubbing his back, which pushed Naruto over the edge as the DMN broke. He finally broke down and embraced Musa as he cries while they fall on their knees to the floor. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Naruto just kept apologizing over and over again while Musa tried to soothe him while some tears were falling down from her eyes as this went on for several minutes. Eventually, he calmed down enough to separate from Musa. Feeling better? Musa asks, a bit tear-stained, but she wasn't bothered by it. Naruto nods. Why yeah, I'm better. Naruto says, wiping the last of his tears away as he looks at Musa's eyes, thank you, Musa. Really? Musa just waves this off. It was no problem, Naruto. Musa says, but Naruto just shakes his head. No, thank you. You told me a lot of your past, even though you shouldn't have. I don't know how to repay you for this. Naruto says with Musa once again waving it off. It was no issue, Naruto. You're my friend and you needed help. I decided to give the help you needed. Musa says with a small smile. The two looked at one another for a bit as emotions and thoughts ran through their minds. Slowly, they start to lean into one, staring into each other's eyes, just as their mouths were just mere space from one another. Ring. 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 A ringing sound went off, stopping the two teens from what they were about to do, and they snapped to reality as they noticed their faces were so close, causing them to blush and move away. That's my phone, should probably go and see what's up. Naruto says with Musa surprisingly nodding shyly while looking away from him. Why yeah. Musa stutters. Naruto gets up and walks into his room to the bed where the phone lies. While he was doing this, Musa was thinking of what just happened. SHT. What was that? What was that? What was I about to do? Was I really going to kiss Naruto? I mean, he is mysterious and he's a bit of a rebel, and fun to be around, boyish, kind and gentle, easy to talk to, one hell of a singer, and, wait, am I falling for Naruto? Musa thought as her blush reddens while placing her hands onto her cheeks, feeling the heat radiating off them. OHSHT. Musa was brought out of her thought by hearing Naruto's yelp. She turns and sees him panicking over something. What? What's wrong? Musa asks. The race. It starts in 15 minutes. Naruto yells. He drops his phone on the bed and starts running around his room, looking for clothes to wear. Wait, what race? Musa asks. There's a race in the city for the Day of the Rose called the Race of the Rose. It's held every year and I wanted to go there and maybe win this year's race. There is a reward and the winner gets it. I'm registered there since I signed up 3 weeks ago and I'm late. I have to get there quick. Naruto shouts. He starts to undress. First was his t-shirt and then his shorts. He was about to take off his boxers when he stops and notices Musa was staring at him, eyes fixed on him as her blush had returned, but this time, it was redder than last time. Ah, Musa, could you? Naruto stammers, blushing as Musa snaps out of her state and realizes that Naruto saw her staring. Her face went red, her eyes widening. Oh my god. I'm so sorry. Musa yells. She grabs the door and slams it shut. Outside, she stood next to it, panting as she tries to calm down with her blush fading a bit but still remains. After a few moments, hearing stuff from the inside, the door opens with Naruto wearing a race suit that consisted mainly black with some orange in some areas of the suit. He didn't have gloves on and had his mask around his neck. Alright, I'm about to head off. Naruto says. Musa nods. Okay, good luck at the race. I'll see you later. Musa says. Hey, do you want to come with me? To see the race? Naruto asks. Musa was quick to shake her head. I don't know, I mean, I am the one who's making you late as it is and I don't want to be a bother to you. Musa says, but Naruto shakes his head this time. No, you're not. You're not a bother to me at all. I do need someone who could, I don't know, cheer me on. But I understand if you don't want to. Naruto asks. Musa thought on it for a bit. She then looks at Naruto and saw his version of puppy eyes, or in this case. Alright, I'll go with you. Besides, it's not every day you get to see a race in the city, Musa says. Naruto cracks out a bright smile. Awesome. You won't be disappointed. Naruto says. Musa couldn't help but smile as well. After seeing Naruto's smile, it meant that some of the darkness in his mind was leaving, not all but some. That was progress. They head to his bike as Naruto closes the engine, sits on it, and starts it up. The engine roars to life as blue flames sprout out of the exhaust. He closes his eyes and revs the engine, loving how beefy it sounded. It was back. He opens his eye and turns to Musa, nudging his head to her. Come on, we've got a race to get to. Naruto says. Musa shrugs and heads over to him, sitting on the bike behind him. He grins and revs the bike up a bit more as it hovers off from the floor and jets out of the garage bay. Thanks to the jolt, Musa instinctively wraps her arms around Naruto's chest to prevent falling off the bike. The two zooms through the tunnel until they start heading toward the exit to the outside and they zoom onto the road toward the city. Musa looks at the surroundings and saw how the world looked like a blur as they were zooming at high speeds. It felt like the world was just an illusion and they were, just wind. Oh, it felt nice. It made her feel, freedom. She turns to Naruto and saw he was focused on the road ahead, smiling as his hair was flowing gracefully along the wind. She couldn't help but feel that he had this, bright energy to him, but that dark anger she felt that night was also there. While it was there, the bright energy was overlaying it, making it hard to really feel it. She places her head on his back and closes her eyes, letting the surrounding noises and engine fade away, and she only was listening to one thing. His heartbeat. They were reaching the city as fireworks were going off about it, signaling that the race was about to begin. City Center Magix. The city's center was packed with the citizens of Magix as a course was made with the city streets. This was the course of the Race of the Rose. Various racers were getting ready for the start of it and most of them were famous racers. Some of them were even students of Red Fountain, and Brandon, Sky, and Riven were among the racers. Riven was seen, prepping himself for the race when he notices Bloom walking over to him, with her hands behind her back. Riven. Bloom says. What do you want? Riven scoffs, glaring at the red hair, angry at her for what she did to him when she and Stella met up with him and the others earlier. He had tried to flirt and ask Bloom out but she refused as he did it in a rude, cocky manner after trying to make a bet with his teammates on the race. He tried again but she wasn't having it, and she retaliated by splashing him with water from a pot. He got angry and she tried to apologize but he left before she could. "Look, I'm sorry for what I did earlier. It was wrong of me. I'm sorry." Bloom says, feeling. "I wanted to give you this." Bloom says, pulling her hands from behind and had something in them. It was a box. She opens it and the box reveals a strange device in it. Bloom takes the device out. "It's a present, it's an apology for how I reacted to you and dash. Give it." Riven cuts Bloom off as he snatches the device from her hands. He presses a button on it, and the device changes into a futuristic streamlined racing helmet. He places the helmet on his head and he liked how it felt. It felt good. He presses the button on top of the helmet and it changes back to its original form. "I like it, feels good. Thanks." Riven says, turning his attention back to his bike, but before he went on further, he turns back to Bloom. "Hey, was there anything else you wanted to say?" He asks, hoping that she took his offer on that date. "Just, good luck in the race." Bloom just says and leaves him alone back to his work. Unaware that people were watching them. The racers hop onto their bikes and pull at the starting line as the crowd were cheering and ready for the race to start. The race is about to begin. "Ladies and gentlemen. Are you ready?" An announcer yells when the crowd responds to him loudly. Now, you may notice something off with the lineup. We're one racer short. We have no idea where he could be, but if he doesn't show up in time, he can't race, unfortunately. The announcer says, leaving some of the spectators to wonder where was this last missing racer. In an alleyway behind the crowd, Naruto and Musa were there as they had just arrived in the city center. Naruto looks up to a monitor and saw the racers lined up at the start. "Oh great, they're at the start line already." Naruto says, frowning. Musa turns to him. "Can you still race? Even if they're about to begin?" Musa asks as Naruto thought back to the rules and realized a loophole in them. "I can, if I can make it past the start line in 10 seconds after the race had started, they have to let me race. If I don't, I'm disqualified." Naruto says. Frowning as he looks around and saw that he couldn't enter the track in a normal way. "I need a way to get onto the track and rush it. But how?" Naruto thought. He began to look around the area to see if there was a way to enter the track in time. He spots a nearby truck parked and it was a flatbed. He gained an idea. "That's it." Naruto thought. He turns back to Musa and grabs her by her shoulders, causing her to turn to him. "I got a way to get onto the track and compete. It's risky but it might work. You can go and watch the race." Naruto says. Musa nods. "Okay. I'll go and look for Bloom and Stella." Musa says. Naruto nods and turns back to his bike and hops on it. He was about to leave for his plan when. "Wait, Naruto!" Musa yells, stopping him. He turns back and saw her rubbing her arm while looking to the floor for a little bit before looking up at him, staring into his eyes. "Gee, good luck in the race. I'll be rooting for you." Naruto was stunned at first at seeing Musa like this, but he lets out a smile. "Thanks, Musa." Naruto says as he zooms out of the alleyway and turns left. "Now, where are they?" Musa thought as she starts to look for the others. The racers were lined up and ready, and the announcer floated near them on a hovercraft near A. "These are the light singles, gentlemen. When they go dark, that's when you set off. Are you ready?" The announcer asks as the racers rev their engines, while looking at the lights. 3. Not that far down the street, Naruto turns onto the relatively empty road as he saw on the monitor that the first single light was on and time was out. He had to do this if he wanted to race. "Hope this works," Naruto thought as he places his mask around his mouth and a black helmet materialized over his head as he lines up to the truck. 2. Musa was walking through the crowd. "Where are they? I'd figure that they'd be here since everyone's here. Musa thought. She looks around a bit more until she spots a strand of red ginger hair and blonde hair. She knew who the hair belonged to. Guys! Musa yells out and heading toward Bloom and Stella, who turn and were surprised in seeing her here. Musa! What are you doing here? Stella asks. I came here with Naruto to watch him race. Musa says, causing Bloom and Stella to be shocked by this. Wait, Naruto's here. Where? Bloom asks. Surprise and panic were filling her. He's somewhere else, but he said he has a plan to enter the race. Musa says. She notices Bloom was getting anxious about something. What's wrong? Why do you look panicked? The Trix are here. I've been tricked. What? 1. Naruto sets off, heading straight toward the truck's flatbed as he lines his path up for it. Bloom, Stella, and Musa were running down the sideway, passing civilians along the way. What do you mean by tricked? Musa asks. I was given a helmet by someone who looked like Timmy, but Stella told me that he's nowhere near the city today. Bloom says. Why would they trick you? Stella asks. Yes, I don't know why, but they're up to something. Come on, we have to stop them. Bloom says. Musa thought back at what Bloom said to her earlier and remember something. Wait, you said they gave you a helmet. Where is it? Musa asks. I gave it to Riven. He's wearing it right now in the race. Bloom shouts, causing the others to go eyes wide. What? Go. As soon as the light went green, the racers set off with Brandon taking the earlier lead while Riven was hot on his tail. The crowd cheer, seeing the race has started. As this happened, someone screamed, causing everyone to turn and see an orange supped-up hover bike soar over the crowd and land on the track, and past the start line. The announcer noticed something on the lineup as the last name on the registry flashed and go black, telling him that was Naruto. Wait, that's the last racer. He's made it in time before he could get disqualified. He's entered the race in a flamboyant way we've never seen before, folks. This could be exciting. The announcer yells, causing the crowd to realize what was going on, and they cheer and turn to the screen in watching the race unfold. Naruto was in last place, but he was surprisingly catching up to the other races as he maneuvered past most as they took sharp corners and made the elaborate drifts, with most of the racers wiping out due to something happening or couldn't keep control of their bike. Naruto was now in the top 3 as he was behind Brandon and Riven, with the two duking out for first. Naruto lines up for a chance to pass them, and when he saw one as they separate, he shifts gears and Akira shot out a boost of speed and shot him forward and past the two. Whoa! Never had that happen before. Was that the Bernoulli Converginator? If so, what the hell did Hank do to it? Naruto thought. He shook his head and decided that was for later. Right now, he had a race to win. He was in first with Brandon in second while Riven was in third, but there was one last racer behind them, catching up to them. As they were heading down a straight, the announcer saw something fly onto the track. What a race, folks! And we even have an unusual competitor who just flew onto the track. A red-haired fairy. The announcer yells, causing Naruto to stop focusing on the road and took in what he said. Wait, red-haired fairy? It couldn't be. Naruto thought. He turns his head back and sees Bloom in her Winx form, flying on the track. He was shocked. He lets up on the accelerator and lets Riven and Brandon pass him as he slows down enough and rides next to Bloom. Bloom! What's going on? Why are you on the track? Naruto asks. Naruto, is that you? Bloom asks and Naruto nods, showing it was him. We've got trouble, Naruto. The Trix are here. They tricked me with having one of their minions disguised as Timmy and handed me a helmet, and Riven's wearing that helmet right now. What? Naruto yells. Suddenly the last unknown racer passes them and heads straight toward Brandon. They lift their hand out to them and a purple magical beam shot out to Brandon's bike, causing it to go haywire and almost made him crash, but he regains control and stops on the side, eliminating him from the race. Naruto had sensed the magical presence of the unknown racer and he knew who it was. That's Darcy. I recognize that vertigo spell from anything. Naruto says. The two saw that Darcy was now heading toward Riven as he was in first. She's heading straight toward Riven. We have to stop her. Bloom says. We've got to catch up. Hop on and hold on tight. I don't know if I can control what about to do. Naruto says. Bloom flies up to the bike and sits on it. Naruto shifts gears again and inside Akira, the Bernoulli converginator glowed and sent a pulse through the engine, causing the whole bike to gain a new speed and shoot toward Riven at high speed. They easily passed Darcy and were catching up to Riven, once they were neck and neck. The two turned to Riven. Riven. Bro, you've got to stop and take that helmet off. Naruto yells. He's right, you have to stop and take it off. It's dangerous. Bloom yells. Riven turns to them. Wait, Bloom and Riven recognized Naruto's voice. The mechanic, you two aren't going to stop me. No one can, not when I'm about to win. Riven says as he turns back and focus as he accelerates. No. You did understand. That helmet, it's dash. Bloom was cut off when they suddenly hear Riven scream. They saw Helmet was sending electricity, frying his head. This was causing him to start losing his balance and control before he crashed and was sent flying. Naruto and Bloom saw this and reacted quickly. Bloom flew up and caught Riven, but the force of catching him mid-air had caused Bloom to fall down. Naruto sped up and once he was under them, stops and caught them with Akira, sliding across the track as they passed the finish line. Once they had come to a complete stop, Naruto got Riven off from Bloom and set him down to the ground and starts checking on him. Is he alright? Bloom asks, worried if Riven was hurt. I don't know. Naruto says, his helmet has dematerialized but his mask was still on. Naruto saw a button on the helmet and presses it, causing the helmet to change into its basic form and he took it off. Brandon and Sky approached them and saw Riven on the floor. What happened? What did you two do? Brandon asks, approaching them along with Sky. We did nothing, he lost control of his bike suddenly while we were trying to tell him to take the helmet off. Bloom explains. Riven groaned a bit before he started to stir awake. He looks around and saw the others were checking on him. He looks around and spots Darcy as she was taking off her helmet. Hey, you okay? Darcy asks. No one noticed that her eyes flashed momentarily and Riven's flashed as well. He smirks as he stands up and heads over to her. I am now appealing. Riven says, making Darcy giggle a little. Before she could say anything else, Bloom flew and got in between them. Musa and Stella approached the group and watched what was unfolding. Riven, get away from her. She's one of the witches from the other night. Bloom says, glaring at the witch who holds her hands out in defense. Hey, chill out. I was only here to race, there's no law saying women can't race. Dakari says. But I know you and your friends caused the accident. I don't know how you did it but I know you did. Bloom yells, causing Naruto to get behind her and stop her from attacking. How about you get away from me? I saw you and the mechanic next to me. I don't know what you did, but it was you who did something to my helmet that made me lose the race. Just so your mechanic could win. Riven shouts at Bloom in anger as he takes the helmet off and tosses it at Bloom. Naruto catches it and crushes it with his hand, letting drop to the floor in pieces before turning to Riven. Hey, back off. She was only trying to help your ungrateful butt. Naruto says, glaring at Riven, but the hotshot wasn't bothered by the glare and scoffs at him. Oh, and of course, you defend this sorry excuse of a fairy. That's what all they are, useless excuses. I mean, That's why you'd hang around them since you're weak too. I saw how F up you were that night. Maybe you should have stayed down and let us deal with that monster. Not you, you untrained specialist wannabe. Riven yells. Naruto was getting angry, so angry that his irises starts to turn ruby red with his pupils constricted and were slitting. You. Naruto growls out. He was about to move toward Riven and knock his lights out, if Musa didn't grab his arm and made stop him as he looks at her. Calm down, Naruto. He isn't worth it. Please, calm down. Musa pleads with Naruto. He saw that his anger wasn't helping her and he saw that the others were on edge. He takes a few deep breaths and calms down enough as his eyes were returning back to normal. Riven. Scoff at seeing this. He, just as I thought. You can't do SHT without your lady's approval. Man, what a wimp/simp you are. Riven says. Eventually Sky had enough of Riven's behavior. Riven, if you're going to be nothing but rude to the ones who saved you, then I suggest that you get the hell out of here. Sky says as Riven scoffs and looks at him with unimpressed eyes. Whatever, I'm out of here. And I'm going to ask for a transfer out of this stupid team. You're all holding me back. Riven. You stay away from me. Riven says to Bloom as tears begun to appear in her eyes. Whoa, such anger, such power with it. Darcy thought, surprised at the fact someone like Naruto processed such a thing. She lets out a powerlust grin as her eyes gain a certain glint to them. I like it. I'll keep it a secret for now. Up until I figure out how to crack you. Wait, Riven. Let me come with you. Dakari says, looking back to the group, and gives Bloom a discreet smirk. Once the two had disappeared into the crowd, Naruto roared in anger. BSTRD. Naruto roars, punching a large hole into a wall beside him, anger at Riven and how he was filled his mind as he looks up and glares at where Riven and Darcy had gone to. A hand places itself on his shoulder, he looks up and sees Sky looking at him. I swear, if that guy pisses me off one more time. Naruto mutters, a hand places itself onto his shoulder, he looks up and sees Sky looking at him. Calm down, man. Don't let what he said get to you. It's not worth getting so worked up over. Yeah, you're right. Naruto says as he sighs. He takes his hand out of the hole and turns to Bloom who looked like she was about to break down. Are you okay, Bloom? And no, I tried to help him, make him understand that it was the Trix and that I didn't do a thing to hurt him. Bloom says as the tears were close to falling. Naruto goes to her and pulls her in for a hug as he soothes her back. It's okay, Bloom. It's okay, there are people out there who aren't grateful for what they have or what people do for them. It's not your fault if Riven's like this. Naruto says as he continues to rub her back, she breaks down and sobs onto his chest. Stella and Musa go to them and place their hands on her shoulders. Bloom turns to them. Yeah, things like this happen all the time. We have no control over how people act. That's life. Stella says with Musa nodding. Bloom goes to them and hugs them as she reverts back to her normal state. Sky lets out a sigh. Looks like we've lost a member. Sky says with Brandon sighing was. Give him time. Maybe he'll calm down and see that he's in the wrong here. Sky says. Maybe. And I hope so. Brandon says. Eventually, Naruto received his winning prize, seeing as he was the only one who was left and had crossed the line first. His prize was in the form of a wish orb that he can use at any time, but he decided in saving it on a rainy day. Thanks to the event in the race, no one felt like going to the ball and decided to call it a day. The guys said their goodbyes to the Winx as they parted ways with their respective schools. Bloom had cried herself to sleep and Naruto opted to take her on his bike on the ride back to Althea. Once the four made it back and saw that no one was still there, they enter the hallways toward the girls' dorm. What a day! Naruto sighs, carrying Bloom to her room, as Musa and Stella agree with him. they all felt exhausted, mentally and physically. Yeah. I feel bad for Bloom. Stella says. Yeah, but she's tough. She can get through this. I know that for a fact. Naruto says, looking down to Bloom as she slept. So, what should we do now? Watch a movie back at our dorm? Stella asks. You guys go on ahead. I have something to do. I'll catch up once I'm done, okay? Musa says. Naruto and Stella looks at her before turning to each other and turn back to her and nod. Okay. The two blondes say, they left Musa as she walks in the other direction and walks all the way up to one of the school's tower balconies. She looks over to the night sky and sees the city in the distance. Celebrations were still going on. She sighs and pulls out something from her pocket. It looked like an unbosomed flower. She set the device down on the balcony and sits on it as well. She then sends some magic to the device and a hologram video image of a fair-skinned young woman with shoulder-length blackish-blue hair that resembles a bob with pieces of hair tied back and dark gray eyes. Hi, Mom. Man, do I have things to tell you. This year so far has been interesting here at Alfea. I met some really great girls who are my roommates and we're great friends now, and there's this boy I met. He's strange, but I'm thinking it's either his amnesia or that's how he really is, but he's fun. Musa says as she giggles a bit while the video hologram of her mother smiles. Musa stops giggling and frowns as she looks at the hologram. He's a hurt and scared kid and he's like me. I want to help him, I really do. 'Cause, what would happen if he destroys himself? Musa asks as the hologram frowns. What do I do? Musa asks the hologram just looks at her, not answering. She sighs and shuts the video off. She sighs and looks onto the city. I wish you were really here, Mom, I could really use some advice here. Musa thought. Sunday. Flora and Bloom's room, Winx dorm Alfea. Night. It was the middle of a stormy night in Magix with most of its people fast asleep, and the same could be said for the fairies and human of Alfea. But in the Winx dorm, a different story was in play. In her shared room, Bloom was moving about in her bed as she twists and turns in it while attempting to reach something. Flora was wide awake and was by Bloom's bedside, watching her with a worried look. The reason why she was worried was that Bloom was shifting in and out of her Winx form while she was still sleeping. Deciding that this could be serious, Flora walks out of her room and heads over across from her room to Stella's. She knocks on the door a few times and waits for the princess to hopefully respond. After a few minutes, the door opens and Stella with messy bed hair steps out of her room, sleepy and dazed. Who it is? Wait, don't tell me. Stella suddenly says. She then sniffs the air a bit before turning back to Flora. Oh, it's you, Flora, I'd recognize that perfume anywhere. I think you should change it. Thought, fewer flowers and more class. Stella yawns. She turns around and walks back into her room toward her bed to go back to sleep, but Flora follows her inside and goes to her bedside to wake her up. Now's not the time for this, Stella. I'm here about Bloom. Flora says, but Stella didn't budge from her bed. Wrong room, she sleeps in yours, remember? Stella says. Yeah, I know that, but I'm not here about that. She's doing it again, Stella, but this time, it looks like it's gotten worse. Flora says. Stella turns to her, eyes still sleepy but was aware. Understand what? Stella asks. I think it better if you come and see for yourself. Flora says. Stella turns back into her pillow and sighs in it. Fine. Stella groans. She gets up and the two head back to Flora's room. Once there, they were by Bloom's bed, watching her twist and turn in her bed, but more rapidly. You see, she's talking in her sleep again. She did this on Friday last week and tonight, but she hasn't been like this before. Flora says. I don't think it's that bad. Maybe she's just having a nightmare or something. Stella suggests that people have done things like this before when having nightmares. She's even done something similar before when she dreams about, never mind. But I don't think it's not a nightmare, look. Flora points to Bloom and they saw her shifting in and out of her Winx form. She's been doing that since last night. That's amazing, it looks like she's transforming in her sleep. That takes a lot of power and focus to even do that. Stella says, in awe of this feat since only those who've mastered their power could do this. That made Stella think just how much magical energy Bloom has inside her. Maybe we should do something. We could go and get the others. Flora says. And then what? Stella asks. I don't know, maybe have Tekna do something for her. Or have Musa play something. Or call Naruto and ask him if he knows anything about this. Flora asks, thinking about the options they had at this time. Flora. Stella calls Flora but she doesn't hear it. Or maybe we should tell Miss Griselda or Miss Farragonda or maybe not. Flora says. Flora. Stella says her name again, this time, slowly as she was getting annoyed by Flora's rambling. Or maybe we shouldn't do anything at all, maybe this is like sleepwalking, we could do more harm than good and Flora was saying but Stella interrupts her. Flora. Calm down. Stella shouts, she grabs Flora by her shoulder and began shaking the nature lover to calm her down from her rambling. Or else you'll upset me and make me raise my voice and Stella shouts but someone else interrupts her. What's going on? The two turn and see Bloom awake and rubbing her eyes, back in her normal form. Bloom stops rubbing her eyes and looks up and sees Stella and Flora standing by her bed in their PJs, and looked like they were arguing. What are you two doing? Bloom asks. Stella and Flora turn to each other before turning back to the redhead. We can explain. Stella says. Monday. Courtyard, Alfea. So, you were having a nightmare last night? Tekna asks, she and the others along with Kiko were walking out by the courtyard with puddles of water from the storm last night. They were discussing Bloom's nightmare. No, it wasn't a nightmare, it didn't even feel like one. Plus, it didn't feel like a dream either. Try and give us more details. What do you remember about it? Tekna asks, pulling out a device from her pocket. It's hard to explain. It was a lot more vivid than any dream I've had. Bloom says. Let me try something. Tekna says, she presses a button on the device and it opens up with a robotic ladybug in it. Activating Psychic Ultra Scanner. The robotic ladybug flies out of the device and over to Bloom and starts scanning her brain. There were colors everywhere and then I saw a face for this appealing woman. Bloom explains, the ladybug scanned her thoughts on the dream and a read came to the device and Tekna reads it. The scan indicates traces of psychoplasmatic evanescence evaporation, level 26. Tekna says. Hey Tekna, will you please stop cutting in with that thing? Musa asks, she was not wearing any bandage on her chest as she has been medically cleared by the school's nurse earlier that day, meaning she could transform and use magic once more. It's okay Musa, I asked Tekna if she could log all of my dreams to analyze them. Bloom says. You know if you want. I can hook you up to my electrical mind reader while you sleep, it'd help us to better understand your dreams. Tekna says, Bloom seemed a bit unnerved by the thought of something on her as she slept. And no thanks Tekna. It's fine just the way we're doing things. Speaking of which. Bloom says, she looks on ahead and stares at Stella, I'd really appreciate it if you'd stop coming into my room and waking me up by shouting. She says with Stella raising her hands in defense. What? I'm sorry that I woke you up but blame your roommate, she's the one who came to me and asked for help. Stella says, pointing to Flora who flinches a bit as she looks down nervously. Sorry Bloom, I was just worried about you and how you were reacting to your dreams at night. I thought you were having bad experiences in them. Flora says, Bloom smiles at her sincerity and places her hand on Flora's shoulder. It's fine, I understand. I'm sure that you were trying to do the right thing. Bloom says, making Flora feel better. Tekna continues to look at the device as it scans the data it's collected before it presents a final reading. I've processed all the data from my dream prod, and there's a strong possibility that what you were seeing wasn't a dream or nightmare, but in fact a psychic magic message or vision. Tekna says. You mean, the woman was trying to talk to me? Bloom asks. The robotic ladybug flies back into Tekna's device and the device closes as the data continues to get analyzed and processed. Through your dreams, yes. And from the memory waves that were left in your cortex thanks to the vision, I was able to get an image of her. This is what I got. Tekna says. She presses another button on the device and it projects a hollow image of the same woman Bloom has seen in her dreams as of late. So, what do you think? Is this her? Tekna asks. Bloom couldn't lie and nodded, recognizing the woman. Yeah, that is her. This is amazing, Tekna, you're a true blue techno whiz. Bloom says. I'd rather be called a tech fairy, but thanks. Tekna says, smiling at the compliment. Bloom looks back to the image and gets a closer look at her. Now that I got a better look at her, I'm sure that I've seen her from somewhere, but where? Bloom says. She starts to think back from where she could have seen this woman before besides her dream, and then, it draws to her. Of course, I remember now. It was at the time Stella got captured by the Trix and we got to Magix. It's in the main square. She wasn't walking in the crowd, but I felt that she was looking at me. I looked around and I saw her, from the facade of the tall building, as an engraving on it. Bloom says, remembering the image of the woman in the city, and the times she thought she saw her during the day of the Rose Festival on Saturday. Stella snaps her fingers, now seeing what was really going on. Oh, I get it now. It was just indigestion. Stella says. Everyone turns to her with raised eyebrows, looking confused. My stomach was perfectly fine that day, Stella, and it still is. Bloom says, but Stella shakes her head. No, I meant mental indigestion. Stella says, confusing the others even more. What does that even mean? Musa asks, thinking Stella had lost it. What I mean is that you've got a lot on your mind. With all the exams coming up, the Trix and their deal with us, and that you're an earthling, meaning that your brain isn't so used to how hard things are here. Plus, we can't forget the fact that a boy is on your mind. Stella says, letting out a grin. Bloom thought of a certain blonde-haired, whiskered-faced teen they knew, and she blushes at what Stella could be saying. I don't know what you're talking about. Bloom stutters, turning away from the Solarian princess. Oh come on, we all know this boy since he's our friend and fellow member in the Winx. Don't think I haven't seen the looks you gave him while we were watching the movie on Saturday night. Stella says. Bloom mentally cursed herself for getting caught by Stella for doing discreet glances at Naruto that night, but apparently, it wasn't as discreet as she thought. I still don't know what you're talking about. Bloom still denies it. Stella shrugs, knowing that eventually, Bloom will crack. Whatever helps you sleep at night. The point is that you had a dream, everyone has them. So don't make a big deal out of it. Stella says. Bloom started to get annoyed by Stella's attitude and starts clenching her fists. It wasn't just a dream. Bloom says, but Stella just shakes her head. Oh Bloomy, Bloom, Bloom. Stella says. Are you being poetic or sarcastic? Tekna asks. I'm just saying that Bloom is just blowing things out of proportion. Stella says. Bloom looks at her, thinking that Stella thought she was joking about this. Are you saying that I'm just making things up? Well, I'm not okay. Why would I even do that? First I was just hearing her voice, but now since last night, I'm starting to see her clearly. Bloom says. Stella however looked unconvinced. Not buying it. Stella says. Bloom got anger. I did see her. She is real and I'll prove it. Bloom shouts. She starts leaving the others and heads toward the main building with Kiko following her. Where are you going, Bloom? Musa asks. To the library. There's got to be proof of her and I'll show it to you all if it's the last thing I do. Bloom shouts as she enters the building. The others look on in shock at how mad Bloom had gotten before Flora, Musa and Tekna turned to Stella and gave her frowns and looks of disappointment. Nice going, Stella. Musa says, making the princess of the group turn back to them. What? What did I say? With Bloom. Althea's library. Bloom was in the school's library, passing by the numerous bookshelves that contain hundreds, if not thousands of books collected across the Magix universe. I'll show them all. Bloom says, still grumpy about Stella's comments. She continues to walk through the library until she reaches the front desk where the head of the library sat, reading a book. She had short and thick cloud-shaped purple hair and her eyes are at an angle pointing upwards. She wore large round glasses. Her outfit was the stereotypical librarian attire, consisting of a blue vest, light blue, long puffy-sleeved, collared dress shirt, an indigo long skirt that had a small slit at the bottom, and above-knee blue, high-heeled boots. Her name was Miss Barbadia. Hello Bloom, are you here to work on your History of Magic project which is due in a week's time? Miss Barbadia asks, not once looking up to Bloom. Sort of, Miss Barbadia, I'm actually here looking for a book. But I'm not sure where to start looking. I just don't have the name of the book. Bloom says. Well then, go up to the research podium behind those stacks and say the name that. The library will search for the books that contain the name and hand them to you. Miss Barbadia says, pointing behind her. Really? The library will do the search instead? Bloom asks, intrigued by this as it remained her of the internet back on Earth. Yes, it will. Now go and see if you can find the book. Miss Barbadia. Thank you. Bloom says, she and Kiko head behind the stacks where pointed, and they saw a podium in the center between a circle of bookshelves, with the podium a butterfly wings shape. There it is. Bloom says, she heads over to the podium and, so, the library will do the search once I just say the name, huh? Let's give it a try. Daphne. Bloom yells, placing her hand onto the podium and allowing her magic to flow into it. Almost instantly, a book levitated from a shelf and floated to the podium before setting itself in front of Bloom and opening itself to a page that contained the name, Daphne in it, surprising her. Wow, that was quick, much faster than the internet back home. Now let's see. Bloom says, she scrolls through the page that was displayed but she frowns as she sees that this book was a dictionary. No, I don't want to know what it means. I just want to know a fairy named Daphne. Bloom says, closing the book. She decides to give it another try, this time in a different way. Daphne the fairy. Bloom yells, then two more books floated out of their shelves into Bloom, displaying more info on. Hey, it worked. Now let's see. Daphne, one of the 9 of Magix. They are the supreme fairies that ruled over the magic dimension for eons, following the great dragon's disappearance at the beginning of time. Bloom reads the info. So she's one of the nymphs of Magix. Bloom says, relieved that she's gotten some clues on who this woman was. She was about to read on her some more when she notices her hand was still on the podium, and her magic was still flowing into it. She looks up and sees a lot of books flowing around her at a fast pace. Wait, stop. Enough. Miss Barbadia. Bloom calls the librarian. Miss Barbadia was altered by Bloom's yelp and looks up from her book to see books fly around the. What's going on? Miss Barbadia asks. She looks and sees Bloom in the middle of the research podium, ducking as books flew by her. She then hears something rattling beside her. She turns and sees a chained golden gate shake, as if something wanted to get out of there, the rare sacred books. Miss Faragonda. Barbadia yells, running out of the library to look for the headmistress for assistance. Bloom and Kiko ducked under the podium as more books began to fly toward her and form a tornado around her. Just as it was picking up speed which started to freak her out, someone came out to her rescue. TLAH. This person says, and in a flash, all the books stopped their rotation mid-air before all falling back to the ground. Bloom was hiding under the podium, holding Kiko with her eyes closed, not seeing that the books were stopped. I say that the library system needs a complete overhaul. Bloom opens her eyes and sees the book all on the ground and looks up to be greeted by Faragonda. Miss Faragonda. Bloom says, getting out of her spot and going to the headmistress before giving her a hug, shaking from the experience she had just now. It's okay Bloom, everything's fine now. Faragonda says, rubbing the girl's back to soothe her. Miss. The Golden Gate was about to open. If something would have happened to those books, I could never forgive myself. All these powerful texts were written by and for magicians, and if they were to have been damaged or heaven forbid, destroyed, who knows what would have happened? Miss Barbadia says, panic in her tone at the thought of these books getting destroyed. There's no cause for alarm. The situation has been resolved before any lasting damages were made. Faragonda says, she turns back to Bloom and lifts her head, making her look at her. Are you alright Bloom? Bloom slowly and shakenly nods. I think so. I am so sorry about this. I didn't make it. Bloom says, looking down. Faragonda just smiles and places her hand on Bloom's shoulder. It is fine, you should go and rest. You can do your research later once the library is back to normal. Faragonda says, Bloom just nods and she and Kiko leave the research section and process to the exit. Faragonda looks at the books on the floor and notices one practical book that was still open. She picks it up and looks into the page that was open to see just what was Bloom looking at. Daphne, one of the 9 nymphs of Magix. Faragonda reads as her eyes slightly widen. She closes the book and turns to Miss Barbadia. Miss Barbadia. Yes miss. Miss Barbadia says. Can you please place the books back in their correct sections and then shut the library down for the week? Faragonda asks with Barbadia nodding, grabbing the book from her. Yes of course. Miss Barbadia says before she realizes what Faragonda just asked, wait, shut the library? She asks, dropping the book to the floor in shock, this has never happened before since the founding of the school. Yes, and don't use magic at all. After what just happened, you'll never know. Faragonda says. No magic. Miss Barbadia says. That's right, I hope you don't have a problem at all with this. Faragonda says, turning back to Barbadia. Yes, I mean, no I don't have a problem at all. Miss Barbadia says, and with that Faragonda leaves to go back to her office and look at anything about Daphne and Nymphs of Magix. Musa and Tenka's room. Winx dorm. Alfea. 10 minutes later, 5 after Bloom left them. With the other Winx members. The others were in Tekna and Musa's room, discussing Stella and her comments earlier. I just don't understand why you guys are mad at me. All I did was make a harmless remark. Stella says, attempting to defend herself after the others made remarks of their own about her hurting Bloom's feeling about her vision. Right, define harmless. Flora says, not really buying Stella's defense. The princess turns to her and gives her a look. Just follow your plant's example and be quiet. Stella says. Feeling offended by that, Flora turns to her and gives her a look of her own. At least my plants know when to speak instead of speaking before thinking. Flora says. Oh yeah, well Stella was about to say her comeback when she was interrupted. Can you two please keep it down? Some of us are trying to study here. Musa shouts. She was sitting by her desk, trying to read one of her textbooks in peace when this started happening. Oh, don't you start Musa. Or else I'll Stella was saying again but once more, gets cut off by Musa. Or else you'll what? What are you doing to do? Musa asks, not feeling intimidated by Stella's threat. The blonde looks at her for a bit before grins mischievously. I don't know, maybe start talking about something else. Like, let's say boys for instance. Stella says, getting up from the bed. Musa, however, wasn't interested in that. Boring. Now if you aren't going to be quiet, you can leave since this is my room. I've got a test tomorrow and I'd like to read up on it so I won't have to pull an all-nighter again. Musa says, turning her full attention back to her book. Stella wasn't buying that at all and headed over to Musa and sits next to her on her desk. Oh come on. Close that book and spill the beans. Who do you like? We all know that our dear old Tekna gets all flustered and nervous whenever she sees Timmy. Stella says. Tekna, who was by her bed, brushing her hair, stops and turns to the blonde with shock written on her face. Wait. That is so not true. Tekna shouts, standing up. And it's obvious that Bloom has a soft spot for Naruto and a bit of Brandon from what I've seen on how they interact with one another, and while I do find Sky cute, that's pretty much it. While I fancy Naruto a lot, but that's it for me. And I have a feeling that Bloom and I aren't the only ones who's got a soft spot for our resident amnesiac blonde. Stella says, looking at Musa who didn't budge one bit by her theory. Nice try Stella, but you know very well that he's just a friend. Someone we know and are trying to help get his memory back. Musa says. Right? A friend? Would a friend go ballistic and nearly kill the beast that injured you? Or would spend time with you around the campus? That's what friends do, huh? Stella asks. Musa slightly blushes as the memories of the things Stella mentioned come flying back into her mind, and then her blushes deepen in color at the memory of her and Naruto nearly kissing when they were having their moment. She shakes the memories off and looks up from her book and to Stella with narrow eyes. Yes, that's what friends do. Musa says before going down to her book. Then what about Riven? Stella asks. That was when Musa flinched a bit, but Stella saw it as clear as the sun was. What about him? Musa asks. Stella smirks. Got her. She thought. You know what I mean. He doesn't even look at you, even after you tried to be friendly at the party we had weeks ago. Stella says. Musa flinches again. Stella. That's enough. Flora shouts. She and Tekna had enough of Stella's current behavior right now. What? I was just asking her. Besides, no harm done, right? Stella asks. Eventfully Musa lost her temper. I said I don't care. I don't care about Riven and I don't think of Naruto being anything more than a friend. Musa shouts, standing up and slamming her hands onto her desk. The slamming and shout startled Stella enough of her to fall off the desk and land on her but on the floor. I was just joking, that's all. But, are you really sure about that? I know what I saw when you and Naruto were together since the day of the rose, and Riven doesn't seem to care about anything besides Darcy. You should know since you were there with us after the race and him blowing up at Bloom. If I was you, I'd be careful since Darcy took the first guy you tried to be friends with, who knows? Maybe she'll go after Naruto next. Stella says. Musa thought of that and saw an image of Naruto going to Darcy instead of her, and that hurt just to imagine. I said, I don't care. Musa stutters. The emotions were finally getting to her. So much so that she runs out of the room. Flora and Tekna tried to stop her, but it was too late as Musa just runs out of the dorm. They turned to Stella and gave her glares. What? Why are you giving me those looks? Stella asks. Stella. The two shout. Courtyard Althea. Bloom was seen walking through the courtyard once again, holding Kiko in her arms. The little blue bunny lets out some squeaks. Ya Kiko. I finally got some clue about who Daphne finally is. Bloom says, she was happy that she finally had some clues on who this woman was, it had things slightly easier for her. Let's go and tell the others right away and then call Dash, Bloom was saying, but she stops when she sees Musa run out of the building. tears falling from her eyes. Musa. Just who I was looking for. You'll never guess what happened. Bloom was saying, but she stops as Musa was crying before she runs past her and headed straight toward the gate. Bloom looks at her and thought what was wrong. What's wrong with her? Bloom thought. She hears footsteps running out of the building. She turns and saw Stella running toward her. Before either one could react, Stella crashes into her, and the two falls to the floor with Kiko flying through the air before he lands on his feet. Bloom and Stella sat up and rubbed their heads, from the pain after colliding with one another. Bloom, I'm so sorry. Stella says, standing up. Bloom follows her and dusts herself off. It's fine. Accidents happen. Bloom says. Stella shakes her head and grabs Bloom's hands. No, I'm not talking about crashing into you. I'm talking about earlier. I didn't mean to make you upset like that. I shouldn't have teased you like that. Stella says, feeling bad about how she was to Bloom earlier. Bloom just waves it off like it was nothing. It's fine. I may have overreacted a bit. I'm sensitive to serious things. Bloom says. Have you seen Musa passed by here? Stella asks, looking around for the music fairy. Yeah, I saw her run by me just moments ago before you showed up. She looked upset and she was crying. What happened to her? Bloom asks. Stella turns back to her with a serious expression. Where did she run to? Stella asks. She went that way. Bloom says, pointing to the gate. What? Stella yells. She runs toward the gate with Bloom and Kiko following behind. Once they reached the gate, they saw the bus take off. Musa, wait. Stella yells, but the bus doesn't stop. It turns and heads toward Magix. Stella sighs and looks down. Great, how we'll get her back? Stella asks. Bloom looks at her as she picks Kiko up from the ground. Stella, can you explain what's going on? Bloom asks. Stella turns to her. I teased her about Riven and Naruto and she got upset from it. Stella says. She runs her hand through her head. Damn it, why can't I do anything today? And you realize this now? Bloom asks, smirking. Stella turns to her and gave her a look before dropping it and sighs. Well, I guess I deserve that after what I did. How are we going to get to Magix and look for her? Stella asks. Bloom ponders about this a bit before remembering someone who could help. Wait, where is Naruto? Bloom asks. He said he was going to work today when I called him in the morning. Why are you asking? Stella asks. If he is at work, that means he's in Magix. He could go and look for Musa and make sure that she's alright. Bloom says. Stella saw her point and thought it was a good idea. That's a great idea. Let's go and get my phone back at our dorm and call him. While we're at it, let's call the specialists as well. They could help us look for her as well. Stella says with Bloom agrees. The more help, the better the chances. Good idea. Let's go. Bloom says it. Stella nodding. The two walk toward the campus, but along the way, Stella notices something. By the way, what happened to your hair? Did you blow dry it in a tornado or something? Stella asks. Bloom gives her a side-eye look if Stella was staring this again. Stella. Bloom says, but Stella just holds her hands out. Just kidding. Stella says. Warlock Motor Repair / Blacksmith Downtown Magix. Inside the back workshop of Warlock Motor Repair / Blacksmith, music blasted from a stereo on the work desk. Naruto was seen, in his uniform and welding mask, working on a car that looked like it had seen better days. He was vibing to the song that was playing as he was wielding a blowtorch, welding metal onto metal. Hank comes into the workshop and looks at the car before turning to Naruto. Hey, kid. How's that piece of CRP coming along? Hank shouts over the music. Naruto hears him and turns to him before turning off the blowtorch and setting it down and lifting his welding mask up to have a better look at Hank. Going good, if I can keep this up. We might be able to finally be rid of the car once and for all you know. Naruto says, slamming his fist onto the hood of the car. Hank nods his head. Good, 'cause every time we sell this foul beast, she returns in the worse state than when she left in. This has been a bane to me for years now. Hank says, staring at this car with hatred. This wasn't the first time that he's dealt with this car since the owner tends to crash it at the first moment they are given. Relax, once we slap the engine back into it. She'll finally be gone, hopefully for good this time. Naruto says, he had heard stories from his boss about this car and how it always came back to get fixed, in much worse states every time. I hope so as well. I just hope so. Come on kid, I need some help at the front. Hank says, he turns and leaves the shop to the front. Sure thing. Naruto says, he takes off his gloves and wielding mask and goes toward the work desk, and turns the stereo off. He then heads out of the shop and toward the front where he sees Hank standing next to some boxes. Help me lift these boxes and place them in the break room for storage for now until we figure out where to put them. Hank says with Naruto nodding. You got it. Naruto says. They start taking the boxes separately into the break room and place them down before going back and picking up more and taking them there. While they did this, Hank looks at the blonde. Kid, I've been meaning to talk to you about your absence for the last 2 weeks. What happened kid? Hank asks. Naruto just thinks about it whether or not he should tell him the whole truth about what happened and why did he skip work for 2 weeks. Deciding on keeping some details on it, he decides to tell him. Oh, yeah. I had a bad night at a party I was at and I needed to stay low for a while, try and get my head back but nothing was working, until a friend of mine helped me out. She told me some stuff about her and she understood what I was going through and she really looked out for me and stayed with me until I got better. She's a really good friend. And an amazing person as well. Naruto says, thinking about Musa and he couldn't help but smile. Hank sees him smiling and he grins. Oh, a lady friend huh? What's her name and what school is she from? Hank asks. Naruto not seeing the grin answers. Her name is Musa, she's a fairy at Alphea, first year. Naruto says. My, is my idiot of an employee smitten by this fairy? When's the wedding kid? Hank asks. Naruto blushes and nearly drops the last box he was carrying but he miraculously catches it before it could hit the ground. And no. It's not like that. She's just my friend. Naruto yells, his blush deepens when he remembers what he almost did with Musa on Saturday. That's not what your blush is saying. Hank says. Boss. Naruto yells. Hank just chuckles out loud before stopping and turning to Naruto. Relax kid, I'm just messing with you. I'm happy for you that you found a friend, that's good. Means that you have someone who looks out for you and you do the same, right? Hank says. Naruto thinks back to the times he was with the others and how he has helped them and vice versa. Yeah. Naruto nods, and Hank nods as well. Good. That also means that I won't have to always look after your butt every time. Hank says, grinning. Naruto puffs his cheeks out in a mock angry way. What do you mean by that? I'm fine on my own. Naruto says. Hank turns to him and gives the blonde a flat look. Kid, you nearly blow not only yourself and me but also the store in the first week for you working here. Since then I've had to watch you like hawk to make sure you don't kill us all. Hank says. Hey, you know very well that it was my first time operating the plasma cutter. Naruto says, defending himself on that incident. Yeah, and I wish I could have fired you when I had the chance. Hank says. Oh, come on. You know that I'm the best employee you've had. Naruto says. True. But remember I can still fire you. Hank says in a serious tone but Naruto knew better. Love you too, boss. Naruto says, chuckling by himself. He takes the last box to the break room and places it by the rest. He sighs in satisfaction at the job well done. He was about to leave the room when he hears his phone begins to ring in his locker. Naruto goes to his locker and opens it to take the phone out of it. He looks at it to see who was calling him and saw it was Stella. Huh? Stella? Why is she calling me? Maybe it's important. Naruto asks, deciding that maybe the call was important. He peeks his head through the door. Hey boss, can I take this call real quick? He asks Hank, who was by the counter. Sure. Just be quick though. We've still got to beat that piece of CRP down until it's smooth. Hank yells. Naruto nods and pulls his head back into the room. He looks back to his phone and answers the call. Hey Stella, what's up? Naruto asks. Naruto, we need your help. Stella yells. Naruto had to move his phone from his ear due to the volume of Stella shouting, but he heard what she shouted. What? What's going on? Naruto asks. It's Musa, she ran away from school and is somewhere in Magix. Stella says. Why would she run to Magix? What happened? Naruto asks. Stella doesn't speak instantly but after a few moments. I may have teased her too much and made her upset to the point that she just ran out of our dorm, out of Alphea, and into a bus heading to the city. Stella answers. Naruto couldn't help but sigh from this. Great, just great. Naruto thought, sighs again and rubbing the bridge of his nose. He was going to have a serious talk with Stella about this. Alright, I'll try and get off work earlier and go look for her. I can track her with magical sense and see where she is. Thank you so much. We're on our way with the specialists to help search for her. Is Riven there? Naruto asks, hoping that he wasn't there. Thankfully no. Sky told us that he transferred out and is in another squad. Stella says. Naruto lets out a sigh of relief. Thank the dragon for that. I really can't stand that guy. Okay, good. I'll get off work now and start looking for her. I'll call you guys when I find her. Naruto says. Well do, see you and good luck. Stella says. See you soon. Naruto says. He drops the call and process to take off his apron and gloves and changes into his causal t-shirt and headband. He exits the break room and heads toward the exit. Hey, boss. I need to leave early. Something just came up. Naruto says, causing Hank to look up from behind the desk. What? Why? Hank asks. Naruto turns to him. That friend I told you about, she's in the city somewhere and she could get hurt if she's alone. She's not in the best place right now with her emotions, and if she got hurt while I'm here, I don't know what I would do. Naruto says. Hank looks at him and could see the concern and worry on the blonde's face and how this was serious. I understand, kid. You can go and look for her. Consider this as a day off. Hank says. Thanks so much, boss. I'll pay you back for this. Don't mention it, now go. Go find her. Hank yells. Naruto nods and leaves the store, and starts running through the streets of Magix. Once he was in a corner, he closed his eyes and started focusing his sensing ability on the city in search of Musa's presence. It didn't take long for him to sense that she was downtown as well and that she was fairly close to him, about a block or two away from him. But he got confused when he sensed that she was moving away from him and at a fast pace, while he also picked up 7 other presences going after her, 2 of which he recognized and focused on. He opens his eyes. SHT. Musa's in trouble. I got to get to her before they do anything to her. Naruto thought. He starts running in the direction Musa was heading. With Musa, things were not going so well for her at all, as she finds herself currently running for her life. When she arrived at Magix, she suckled and wandered around the downtown district of Magix, trying to get what Stella said off her mind. When she was wondering, she happened to stumble upon a bunch of Cloud Tower witches at a cafe, with them having what looked like to be a party. She peeked through one of the windows into the cafe and saw to her horror Riven, happily chatting with Darcy. Just when she was about to leave, Icy and Stormy confronted her about her spying on them. The two then went and antagonized Musa up to the point where she slapped Icy across her face. This angered the witch to the point where she gathered 5 more witches from the cafe and gave chase to Musa, who had no choice but runs. She found Riven and tried to ask him for help, but he. "This is so not my day," Musa thought, continuing to run away from her opposers who were right on her tail. She took a turn into an alleyway in hopes that she would lose them. Her hopes were dashed away when she ran into a wall, blocking her from escaping, and she saw nothing she could use to climb over it. CRP. A dead end. Musa says. She turns around and was about to run out of the alley when the witches chasing her were now there, blocking her escape. Icy and Stormy float down to the ground and sinisterly grins, seeing Musa was trapped and alone. "Nowhere to run now, little fairy," Stormy says. They start advancing toward Musa as she slowly back away until she hits the wall behind her. Just as they were about to do something. 8-on-1 seems extreme, don't you think? A voice spoke from above the wall. The witches and Musa look up to see who it was, and much to Musa's relief, it was someone she knew standing on top of it. Naruto. Musa thought, happy that he was here. Icy and Stormy, however, weren't as happy about his arrival. You again. Icy growls, glaring at the blonde who leaps off of the wall and gracefully lands next to Musa. He turns to her and smiles before turning back to them and steps forward, hiding Musa behind him. "Sup, Icy and Stormy. I see that you're missing one. Did you replace her with your groupies?" Naruto asks, causing the other witches to growl at him. "Why do you always show up whenever we're about to teach a fairy a lesson? Don't you have something better to do?" Icy asks. Naruto just shakes his head at her. "Nah, remember what I said the night we had that little fight in that alleyway at the beginning of the school year? I said that while I don't really like hitting women, that rule gets tossed out of the window soon as you start targeting my friends. And you've cornered one of them. So, I'll only ask you this one time, leave and don't mess with Musa again. Or you'll be picking up yourselves off from the ground." Naruto says. Mechanic. Naruto and the others turned back and saw Riven stomp past the witches until he was in front of them. "Oh look, the Judas has arrived. What do you want?" Naruto asks. "To tell you that you should turn the way so the ladies here can have a little chat with Musa." Riven says. Musa flinches and hides more behind Naruto. The blonde himself didn't like the tone Riven used. "And why would I do that? Since this is my friend we're talking about here. Since these ladies just want to talk to her. Peacefully." Riven says. Naruto doesn't buy that at all and narrows his eyes, glaring at the purpletal. "I'd like to see you try." Naruto says. Riven saw Naruto wasn't budging and he got angry. "Oh, I'd be glad to do that." Riven growls out. He pulls out his phantom blade and equips it. "I've been waiting to kick your sorry butt since the day I met you." Naruto didn't look scared or intimidated by Riven's threat. He just cracks his neck before materializing his katana from his rune and gets into his fighting stance. "The feeling's neutral, team." Naruto says. Riven got confused by the name but took it as an insult to him while Musa looks at the blonde after hearing the name. "Team. What did you call me?" Riven yells. Naruto took the time in thinking about the name and why did he say it. It felt strange yet familiar to him. "And never mind. Just know that one of us will still be standing after this, the other, he's going to need a lot of spells to recover from what I'm about to do." Naruto says. "Then come on." Riven yells. He charges toward Naruto as they engage in a sword fight. Riven went and delivered strikes and slashes to Naruto but the blonde was prepared from them, countering, blocking, or simply prying the attack with his sword. Sparks flew off from the blades and into the air from each collation whenever Riven fired an attack and Naruto just blocked it. Riven was getting frustrated by this, seeing that Naruto wasn't doing a thing besides blocking. "Is that all you got? Just blocking my attacks?" Riven shouts. He tries to slash Naruto but the blonde just ducks away from the attack and looks at him with a disinterested expression. "Nah, I can do a lot more than this. But why would I waste my energy on a guy that way too hot-headed for himself?" Naruto asks. Riven got even angrier at this, seeing that Naruto wasn't even interested in this fight. Riven lifts his blade up and prepared to send it down to Naruto for a fatal attack, but before he could do it, Naruto saw this and saw that Riven exposed himself. He threw his sword up in the air and delivers 5 heavy punches onto Riven's chest, cracking 3 ribs and breaking 1. This causes Riven to buckle from the hits while spitting out some spit and lose his stance, giving Naruto the perfect chance to do a roundhouse kick onto his midsection which sends Riven flying back and roughly lands on his back where the witches were. Naruto catches his sword by its hilt and turns back to the witches. "So, are you going to stand there, or do I have to come and knock your heads in?" Naruto asks. The other witches were angry at him for his comment earlier, and now that set them off. "Let's get him, girls." One of the witches yells, and she and the other charge toward Naruto. He shifts back into his stance and was prepping one of his attacks when the wall behind him and Musa blows up. They turn and see a red fountain hawk in front of them and stood the Winx and specialists. "Guys!" Musa yells, running toward the girls and hugging them. The boys head to Naruto, weapons drawn out. "Man, am I glad to see you guys," Naruto says, giving them fist bumps as greetings. "Glad to see you do, and alright." Brandon says. He looks down and spots Riven on the floor, trying to get back up while holding his chest. "Whoa, what happened to Riven?" The others see Riven and the state he was in. Proudly kicked his butt. And without even trying, Naruto says, grinning. The boys were surprised at hearing this, considering that Riven was a talented fighter, but to hear that he was defeated by Naruto without difficulty surprised them. Icy growls in anger as she unleashes her powers and a storm began to form over the city. Stormy followed her action by sending blasts of purple lighting into the storm, increasing the storm's intensity while adding lighting to it. Our heroes look up to the storm forming with snow falling down. "Well, that doesn't look promising," Timmy says. "No, it doesn't," Bloom says before turning to the other girls. "Let's transform, girls." They nod. "Magic Winx." The girls yell and they transform into their fairy forms and got ready for the battle. Acting as a lightning rod, Stormy redirects some of the lighting from the storm and shot it toward our heroes. The boys leap or roll out of the way while the girls flew away except Tekna, as her reaction speed wasn't on par with the others. Digital shield. Tenka yells, creating a shield to tank the lighting attack. While she was able to tank most of the attack, the lighting did electrocute her and the focus sent her flying back and landing on the ground, hurt. Tenka. Timmy yells. He tries to run toward her but the other witches were blocking him and the other specialists and Naruto while attacking them, forcing them to only dodge and or block their attack. Icy formed ice spikes and fired them at the girls, mainly aiming at Stella. The blonde reacted and flew away from them with supreme speed and excellent moves. Stella dodges them and flies behind one of the station cars there to regroup. But before she could move away from it, the car suddenly moved back and frozen solid, trapping her. Icy floats toward her and grins before firing more spikes at the car, causing it to explode and making Stella blow up along with it. Musa saw the explosion and flew toward the burning car, hoping that Stella was alright, but before she got to it, Darcy appeared out of nowhere in front of her, intercepting her from Stella. The witch fired some sonic blasts at the ferry but Musa was able to evade them and flew up above the city. Boombox bruised. Musa conjured some magic and fires a magic spell toward Darcy. It hits her and creates a cloud of smoke in place of where she stood. Musa waited for the smoke to clear and sees what state was the witch in, but when it cleared away, she saw that Darcy had vanished. She looks around for the brunette and waits for what she could be planning. She didn't expect her to appear next to her and suddenly blow up, sending Musa to crash onto the floor. The boys were still having some trouble dealing with the other witches, but Naruto was preparing something to get away from them and help the girls. Musa sits up from the floor and shakes her head, clearing away the dizziness. She looks up and saw 8 Darcys circling around her, each holding out a hand with a ball of dark magic forming at it, ready to fire at her. Seeing that she couldn't dodge or escape from this, Musa had no choice but to hold her arms over her and hope that she'd survive this. Naruto saw Musa was in trouble and chose that now was the time to use it. He turns to the guys and girls. Girls. Dudes. Close your eyes. I'm going to go something big. Naruto shouts, and the specialists and still, conscious girls hear this and close their eyes. Seeing this, Naruto lifted his hinata up in the air and poured magic from his rune seal into it. Light art, solar flare. Naruto yells and suddenly, the engravings on his blade lit up into a bright flash, blinding all those who didn't close their eyes. The flash dissipates and Naruto moves past the witches and ran straight toward the Darcys and Musa before leaping into the air as his sword started to spark. Fire art, Ember Massacre. Naruto yells as he slashes his sword down, sending out an arc of orange embers from it, and hits all the Darcys except Musa, causing them to explode in a flash of light. The real Darcy was still in the alleyway, next to Riven, who had passed out from the pain of Naruto's attack as she was healing him, but she passes out as well, having spent all her reserves on him and on the clones that Naruto destroyed. Musa opens her eyes and saw the Darcys were gone and Naruto was next to her. She saw his blade glowing with heat radiating from it and knew he did something. Thanks, Naruto. Musa says. Naruto just nods and gives her a thumbs up. Don't mention it. Naruto says. Hey man. The two turn and saw Brandon, Sky were still fighting against the witches while Timmy was at Tekna, looking over her and her injuries. Are we interrupting something? Could use some help here? Prince Sky asks before taking a hit from a blast of magic. Gotta go help the others, Naruto says, and Musa understood. Same, gotta get Stella out of that fire. Musa says. Naruto nods. Okay. Naruto says. The two dash away from one another to go and help free their friends. In the air, just above most of the buildings, Bloom and Flora were engaged in aerial combat with Stormy. The two fire and accidentally create a combo move involving Bloom's fire spell and Flora's pollen spell to create what looked to be flaming flowers, and they hit Stormy, making her gain some burns from it, but she was still standing, flying, you know what I mean. Angered by this, Stormy conjures and fires another lighting-based spell at the two, but it hits Flora, sending her and hitting the roof of a building where she then fell and hits the top of the Red Hawk, laying there and not moving. Bloom saw Flora wasn't moving and got mad. She summons her magic and starts firing a barrage of fire-based blasts to Stormy, forcing the witch to dodge and evade them. Stormy then attempted to fire a lighting blast at Bloom, but the redhead effortlessly dodges it and fires another fire blast at Stormy, just barely missing her but grazing her thigh, burning the section of clothes off and also severely burning her as well. She screams from the burn before turning and glaring at Bloom as she starts summoning a storm, making Bloom slowly back away from her. Back on the ground, the witches were falling one by one thanks to the teamwork of Naruto, Brandon, and Prince Sky. Timmy was still next to Tekna as she was out of her fairy form and was unconscious. Tekna, can you hear me? Timmy asks, but Tekna doesn't respond. The temperature started dropping rapidly as snow began to fall from the sky around them. Timmy looks up and saw Icy floating in the air above them. He quickly stands up and draws out his shield and crossbow and aims at Icy. Icy saw this and snickers. How noble, yet naive. Let's see where this bravery will lead you once I've turned you into a block of ice. Icy shouts before firing a blast onto the ground, and ice began to form from there before it started spreading toward Timmy and Tekna and started freezing them while Timmy began to shoot at the ice. Musa went to the burning car in search of Stella to see if she was alright. She hears coughing in the smoke. She looks through it and sees Stella in a dome of light magic of her own. She was okay. Musa goes to her and pulls Stella out of the wreckage while the blonde regains her breath and focus. "Thanks, Musa," Stella says, turning to the music fairy. "No worries," Musa says. Stella flies away to rejoin the battle. Musa was about to do the same when a sonic blast was shot at her. She backs away from it as it hits the ground, leaving a crater on it. She looks where it came from and saw Darcy, recovered and smirking. "You!" Musa yells, anger filling her. Darcy's smirk widens. "Yes, me. And this time, I will crush you," Darcy says as her eyes glow. The remaining station cars suddenly turn on and fly around Musa in a circle. Musa tries to fly out of the circle, but one of the cars intercepts her. She turns around to fly in the opposite direction but gets hit by another possessed car at a high speed. The impact sends Musa flying through the air before crashing into a wall, momentarily leaving a crater in it before falling down to N. Back with Timmy, he continues to battle against the ice, but it gains speed in spreading around his body and around Tekna's. He started to fall colder while the skin on his arms began to feel numb. He quickly realizes that he was starting to suffer from the early stages of frostbite and Tekna could be suffering from it as well. He had to get out and away from Icy before he and Tekna froze to death. He forgoes his crossbow and shield before pulling out his own phantom blade and began hacking away onto the ice. Icy saw he was still moving and scoffs at his efforts. "I see you're still moving. Guess I've got to drop the temperature more till you completely turn into ice." Icy shouts. She summons more ice power and blasts it at Timmy. The specialist sees the incoming attack and falls to Tekna, using his body as a shield and braces for impact, but it never came. He turns around and sees Stella in front of him, forming a light magic barrier at the ice to tank it. "Pathetic," Icy says, pouring more energy into her attack as the ice began to form on the barrier. Darcy moves the cars and uses them to form a wrecking ball with them. She moves them just above Musa, who was still unconscious. "This time, you'll crash you," Darcy shout. She moves her hands down and the cars begin to soar downward to Musa, with the intention to crush her. Wind art, razor edge. An arc of sharp wind soared into the air and went through the cars, making them halt their descent. A few moments pass before all the cars moved once more, but when they moved, they separated, showing they were cut in half in clean cuts before exploding. Darcy shields her eyes from the explosion landed right beside Musa and in front of her was Naruto, looking at Darcy with a glare. "Why don't you pick on someone your own size? I'll be glad to since you hurt Riven," Darcy yells before blasting a large wave of sonic bursts at Naruto. He drops his sword before falling onto his knees and grabbing his head, ringing in his ears, and the world started to spin around him. Naruto screams, but that didn't last long as he collapses to the floor, knocked out. Bloom sees Musa and Naruto on the floor and gets worried for them. "Musa, Naruto." Bloom yells. She flies to them but she gets caught by a purple electric lace and gets pulled back by Stormy holding the end of the lace. "Where are you going, little fairy?" Stormy asks as she uses the lave to shock Bloom, making the fairy scream from the pain but stops before she could pass out and makes her look below. "Watch as your friends all fall to us," Stormy says, holding Bloom by her hair and making her watch Sky and Brandon still trying to hold off the witches, Stella still holding her barrier but it was nearly frozen as Icy wasn't letting up at all, Flora still on top of the Red Hawk and still knocked out. Darcy was walking toward Naruto and Musa with a ball of dark magic forming in her hand. Bloom starts to get angry, her magic beginning to leak out of her. "Let me go." Bloom growls out, her irises slowly shift from baby blue to orange while her pupils slit into that of a reptile's. Or what? Stormy mocking asks. Bloom clenches her fists as her magic began to increase in size and energy, one that felt familiar. Icy senses a large magical presence and looks up and saw Bloom glow. What the? Wait, could she be? Icy quickly summons her vacuum. Once it was fully formed, it began to flash brightly, responding to Bloom's magical spike. Icy grins in realization in seeing how the vacuum's reaction. It's her. She's the one. The vacuum suddenly flashed again, this time, it was reacting to something else. What the? Icy utter, she follows where the vacuum was reacting to and saw Naruto. Huh? Icy couldn't say anything else as Bloom erupted, forcing her magic to surge through the area, knocking back all the witches and forcing them to retreat. Some of the surge went into the Winx, healing them. Naruto's eyes twitch a bit before opening as he stands up. What? What happened? Naruto utters, he looks around and saw the girls begin to recover and sit up. He senses large energy above him, making him look up and see something. It was Bloom, glowing brightly as her hair flowed up, but he notices something else around her. Something flew around her in a protective manner. Is that a dragon? Naruto thought, but his thoughts didn't last long as the glowing dragon fades away and Bloom reverts back into her civilian form and she falls from the sky. Bloom! Naruto yelled, he rushed toward her and jumps into the air, catching her before she could hit the ground and sliding on his feet to a stop. He looks down at her and saw she had her eyes closed. Bloom! Bloom, you okay? Naruto asks, worried. Bloom slowly opens her eyes, showing them they were back to normal but had a tired expression. Why yeah, just tired, that's all. Are you and the other okay? Bloom asks. Naruto lets out a sigh of relief with Bloom being okay. All she was just worried and tired. He turns back and sees the others stand up and were okay. He looks around and sees none of the Trix nor the witches as well, just they must have escaped after the light faded. Yeah. We're okay. We're okay. Naruto says. Bloom lets out a sigh of relief and smiles, before falling asleep, letting her exhaustion take over. Naruto just looks at her. And smiles. Naruto. Naruto turns and saw the girls and the specialists run toward them. Dude, you okay? Brandon asks. Naruto nods. Yeah, I'm okay. We're good. Naruto says, standing up and carrying Bloom bridal style. Naruto, what was that light? Stella asks. Naruto couldn't answer since he had no real way to and just shrugs his shoulders. I don't know. Naruto says, he then looks back down at Bloom, but I do know one thing, there's more power in Bloom than we know, and that makes her special. Some time passes and the Winx and specialists were in the Red Hawk, flying over the city as they were heading home. Bloom had woken back up and they were asking her what happened when that light and surge occurred as they sat on crates in the back. So, you don't remember a thing after seeing us down? Flora asks. Bloom took a sip of water from a bottle before shaking her head. No, I don't. The only thing I do remember was getting angry and then I felt stronger and, that's it. The next thing was that I was in Naruto's arms before I woke up again. Bloom says, this confused them, except Naruto. He remembers the notes he took from the Trix's room the night they broke into Cloud Tower and the history of the Great Dragon he knew. The Great Dragon. The being that created the Magix universe as we know it today. The one that had disappeared after resting on a now barren planet. Why are the Trix so invested in it and how is Bloom connected to it at all? Naruto thought. He looks at Bloom and thought about this a bit more. I need more information about it and look at Bloom a bit more. Something fishy is at play here and it could lead to something bad in the future if not looked at soon. So, Riven's working with the witches now? Didn't think the guy would stoop this low. Sky says, shaking his head in disappointment with Riven and his action today. I did. The guy does have some issues that he seriously needs to get checked, or else he could get someone or kill someone in the future. I just hope he knows that we have to report this. Using your weapons against a civilian and provoking them into combat is against the code of conduct as a specialist in training. Brandon says. How much trouble is he in? Bloom asks. At best, he'll just get a suspension and first warning in his record. While not that serious, it could affect him in the long ride. Sky says. Naruto turns to Musa, who was sitting next to him. Hey Musa, are you okay? With all that has happened today? Naruto asks. Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks for asking. I did learn some things today. Musa says. What, that I was right? Stella asks. Musa snorted. No, that I should never go near places where witches hang out at. Musa says. Stella didn't buy. Musa, you have to admit that you have a soft spot for OW. Stella was about to finish what she was saying, but Flora pinches her on her butt, making her stop and shirks from the pain. Stella, don't say anything, or else I'll tell everyone here who you fancy. Flora says. Stella was rubbing her butt but stopped and pales when she heard that. She turns to Flora. Why you wouldn't, would you? Stella asks. Flora surprisingly lets out a smirk, one that was seen before. Oh, I would. Flora says. I'll be good. I promise. Stella says. No pleads. What are you guys talking about? Stella fancy what now? Naruto asks. Stella blushes and turns to him. Nothing. Nothing to worry about. Stella yells, waving her hands. Naruto raises an eyebrow and was confused. Brandon and Sky walks back to the front with Timmy SP. They could land Naruto in the forest as he asked them to. Musa then remembers something back at the alleyway before Naruto and Riven fought, and she turns to him. Oh yeah, there is one thing I need to ask you, Naruto. Why did you call Riven a BSTRD in a dead language? Musa asks, making the other girls turn to them. Huh? What do you mean? Tekna asks. He called Riven a team. Which means BSTRD in Japanese. It's a dead language that was used back on Melody. No one really speaks it except the elders who still live there, but they only use it if they're angry and use it as a way to insult people so they don't figure out what they're saying. I read a few phases and words in on it back in grade school and I understood what team means. Musa says. So, could that mean Naruto could be from Melody then, like you? Flora asks, but Musa just shakes her head. Unlikely, there are no known clans with blondes in Melody, so I doubt he could be from there. Musa says, knowing well that there are no blondes in her home dimension. Well, that's at least a clue, right? Now we just need to get more and we'll finally know where Naruto is from and maybe then find a way to get his memory back. Bloom says. Oh, yeah. There's one more thing I nearly forgot. Stella. Naruto says. He turns to Stella and gives her a serious expression. Me and you are going to have a long chat about teasing your friends and their emotions. You won't do anything rough with me, right? Stella asks, feeling a chill go down her spine. Yes. Naruto only says, but, which one was he agreeing with? That made Stella confused and scared. Will I have time to hide? Stella asks. Naruto just laughs for a bit before looking at her and cracks a grin, a familiar grin they've seen from her only. He stands up and walks over to her before grabbing her hands and pacing them over her before pushing her up against the wall and looking down at her. Sure, you could hide. But that'll just delay the inevitable. Naruto says. Please be gentle. Stella whispers. Naruto just grins wider and leans over to her ear and whispers into it. That all depends on if I'll be in a good mood by the time I get back to Althea. So, be prepared. Naruto whispers. He walks away from her. Stella just slides down to the floor, her blush evident on her face as the others look at her. Help me. Stella just says, praying she could hide before Naruto gets her. The others look at her before turning to Naruto and saw he had an innocent look before turning back to Stella and to each other, wondering rather or not to be involved in this. Cloud Tower. The witches and those who were at the fight with our heroes were returning to Cloud Tower, some were grumpy due to their defeat while some were recovering. The Trix were among those who were recovering. DMN, those girls, and that blonde JRK are becoming a serious pain in the butt. Darcy says, rubbing her head, the headache she was feeling was killing her. You're telling me. I got burned, especially on my thigh. It'll take a week just to heal from the burn. Stormy says, wincing from her burns across her body, but the burn on her thigh felt the worst compared to the others. Why did you make us escape? We could have taken them since we were beating them and I never got my revenge against that blonde but for what he did to poor Riven. Darcy says. I did it because we're having a meeting tonight. Icy says. Why? The two ask. I think I just figured something out. Icy says as they stop walking. Something about what? Stormy asks. Bloom, the Earth Fairy. Up until now, I didn't think it could be true but it is. Icy says, looking toward the sky. What is true? Darcy asks. She is linked to the Great Dragon. Icy says, surprising them. Really? She is? The two ask. Yes, my vacuum reacted to the presence of it in her when she unleashed that power earlier. That's no doubt about it. But, I discovered something else. That blonde boy that's always with them. Icy says. Yeah, what about him? Besides him being a pain and that he pops up everywhere. Darcy asks. My vacuum was reacting to him as well. Icy says, surprising Darcy and shocking Stormy. Really? Stormy asks. Indeed. Whatever the vacuum sensed, it was powerful. Possibly as powerful as the dragon as well. I suggest we keep an eye on him and see what makes him tick and find a weakness, use it to bend him into our will, and extract that power from him for ourselves. Icy says, Stormy and Darcy nod in agreement. Well, Darcy did on the outside, in her mind however was a different story. What? No. She sensed it from him as well. DMN, that'll seriously put blocks into my plans. I have to speed things up if I want to crack him and make him into my pet. Darcy thought. The three resumed walking into the building so they could start making plans. Flora and Bloom's room, Winx dorm Alfea. Night. Farragonda was in her office, watching the night sky through her window when a knock was heard on her door. Come in. Farragonda says, the door opens and Miss Barbadia walks in. Excuse me for intruding, ma'am, I just wanted to let you know that I've finished reorganizing the library. Miss Barbadia says and Farragonda nods. Very well. Farragonda says. If there's nothing else, may I dash, Barbadia was saying but Farragon's turns to her and cuts her off. Actually, there is one more thing. Should Bloom ever try to find out more about who Daphne the nymph is, we must deny access to any and all information about her. Is that clear? Farragonda asks. Why yes, it is, ma'am. But may I ask, why should we deny her access? Barbadia asks. Farragonda just turns back around to the window and watches the sky once more. I have a theory about Bloom, and if I am right. She is not right to learn the truth, not until the time is right. Farragonda just says, leave suspense in the air. Underground tunnels, Winx dorm Alfea. It has been just over 4 weeks and 4 days since we last left our heroes and a lot has happened since. First, the midterm exams have begun in Magix in all 3 schools and the students of Alfea, including the resident unknown human, were busy studying and training for their upcoming exams and for their mid-year scores. And where was our favorite human, you might ask? So, these dreams are getting more and more intense. Naruto asks Bloom, they were walking through the underground tunnels under Althea, heading toward the Winx storm. They were discussing Bloom's recent dreams/visions. No, not really as intense as before. Just, more vivid now. Bloom says. How so? Naruto asks. Well, every time I see her, she just calls out to me. Each time her face gets clearer and more defined and her voice. It's so soothing and gentle, like she's protecting me. Bloom explains. Naruto nods and crosses his arms at his chest while squinting his eyes, making him look like a fox that was thinking. He turns back to Bloom. And do recognize her voice? Naruto asks. Bloom then places a finger on her chin as she tries to remember the latest dream. For some reason, I feel like I do, but I have no clue of how I even know her. Bloom says, she really didn't know why she felt this way when she hears Daphne's voice, but it was so soothing to her. I see. Naruto says, nodding once more. He starts to think about this Daphne, as he felt there could be more to this than they realized right now, but he felt that they just have to wait and see, since time does tell results. He opens his eyes and turns to Bloom. Say, have you heard anything about the Trix yet? Since I want some payback over what they did to the simulator. He asks, and changing the subject. Bloom shakes her head. No, not really. Since they invaded my exam and I beat them, they haven't shown up anywhere. Guess I scared them good, huh? Bloom says, flashing a cheeky grin. The reason why she says this is because a couple of days ago, Bloom was secluded in taking her midterm exams by performing a revival spell on a distant planet created by the school simulator. But the Trix somehow found out about this and hijacked the simulation, trapping Bloom inside of it while keeping the others out of freeing her. The trio tormented Bloom for a bit before taking her pet bunny, Kiko, from her and threatening to kill him, which frightened Bloom, but they tossed him into a lava ravine and this set Bloom off. According to the others, Bloom released a tremendous amount of power from her and thanks to it, defeated the Trix and crashed the simulation, to show that she and Kiko were alright, but Bloom has no recollection of this after blacking out. Thanks to the Trix's antics and Bloom's massive power release, the simulator was heavily damaged and Professor had no choice but to postpone the exams until later in the month or in October. Much to the girls' relief as they celebrated, Professor did ask Naruto and Hank if they could replace the simulator, and they agreed and have been at work overnight ever since and were close in finishing. Yeah, maybe. Naruto says. He looks up at the tunnel's ceiling and begins to think. It was bold to come to Althea in daylight and attack Bloom in an exam where a professor was. What are they really after here, since they failed to do whatever they wanted from Stella's ring, and with the info they had on the Great Dragon is really bugging my mind. What are they really planning? Naruto thought, frowning at this strange mystery regarding the Trix and the Great Dragon. Bloom looks at Naruto and saw he was frowning. Naruto? Are you okay? Bloom asks, calling to Naruto, which snaps him out of his thoughts, and looks at her. Huh? Oh yeah. I'm fine, just thinking about something. Naruto says, rubbing the back of his head while letting a sheepish grin out. What were you thinking about? Bloom asks. Naruto just chuckles and pats Bloom on her head, messing up her hair. Nothing, my little Bloomy Bloom. Naruto says. Bloom pouts and shakes his hand off her head and looks at him. Oh, come on. Tell me. Please, Bloom says, batting her eyes at him while giving him the most dangerous spell known to men, the puppy eyes. While this would affect any other man and submit to her spell, Naruto was not just another man, he was just built different. He smiles and places his hands on her cheeks and pinches them, not hard enough to hurt her but to make her stop her puppy eyes and squash them. Maybe when you're older. Naruto says. He squashes Bloom's cheeks a bit longer before he lets them go. Bloom rubs them and looks at Naruto with a glare, pouting at him once more. Bloom lets out a growl. Naruto sees this and smirks. Come on, I know you like that. Besides, while you do look cute when you are mad, it really doesn't fit your face, Bloomy Bloom. Naruto says, he looks forward and chuckles, never to see Bloom had stopped in place, dropped her pout, and gained a massive blush as she felt embarrassed and happy about him calling her cute. She shakes off the shock and catches up to him while fidgeting her fingers. The two walked a bit longer until they reached a ladder, one that led to the Winx dorm. They were about to climb it when Flora. This is the last straw. They hear Stella shout, presumed to be Flora due to her name being shouted. The two look at each other in confusion. What's going on up there? Naruto asks. Bloom just shrugs her shoulders and they climb up the ladder to the hatch. Naruto opens it before entering the dorm and helps Bloom up. They look around the dorm and saw Stella and Flora by Stella's room door as they were having an argument. This is the last time, you've gone too far and I'm putting a stop to it. Stella yells. Stella, what's going on? Bloom as they walk over to the two. Flora's overdoing it as usual and I'm sick of it. Stella shouts, crossing her arms over her chest. Naruto pats Kiko on his head before looking at the princess. Sick of what? Naruto asks. I'm just carrying out some experiments with my plants. I've got an exam soon and I need space for my plants. Flora explains. No duh, you've been going on about it for the last month now. I'm going to use the power of nature to stop the witch's evil spells. Stella says, imitating Flora's voice, poorly though. Well, what's wrong with that? I don't see a problem. Bloom asks, not seeing any issue in studying. What's wrong with that? In case you haven't noticed, your room has become a humongous chemistry lab. Stella says, pointing toward a large portion of tubes and plants at Bloom's section of their shared dorm. Bloom gave me permission to do it and she said she'll help me study. Flora says. Bloom nods and smiles at the nature lover. That's right. I've already passed the simulation test by default thanks to the Trix and their interference. Bloom says. Stella just crosses her arms again and rolls her eyes. Lucky. Stella mutters but they could hear her. Hey, I had to take on Icy, Darcy, and Stormy on my own. And it wasn't easy, you were there and saw what they were doing to me. Bloom says, placing her hips onto her hips. Yeah, I know. And I'm sorry Bloom for saying that. I guess with the stress from these exams and now Flora's flowers, it really pushed me to the edge. Stella says. Don't worry about Stella. I'm sure things will be fine, just wait. Bloom says, placing her hand onto Stella's shoulder. Don't worry about it. How can things be fine when my room is a mess? Okay, I gave permission to Flora on putting some of her flowers by my window since they need a lot of sunlight. I get that. Then she comes in here and puts Melanona lunicoas. Mimosa venatosa. Flora speaks, correcting Stella on the name. Whatever. But she puts them next to my mirror and closet, you guys. My mirror and closet. Stella says. The male blonde and red hair turn to Flora as she just raises her shoulders. Well, they fed off reflective light from reflective sources and you do have the biggest mirror out of all of us. So it was perfect. Flora says. Stella shakes in frustration. Oh really, so you think that this is perfect? Stella says, pointing toward her mirror and closet. The others follow and they see a flower putting on various makeup while a strand of its root was busy dancing to its reflection while wearing some of Stella's clothes and another root was busy rummaging through her closet. What the? Bloom utters, surprised in seeing this while Naruto just looks at the plant with intrigue on his face. They've been trying on my clothes and makeup for the past 40 minutes. I tried to stop them but they just don't listen to me. Stella says, she started to feel embarrassed and worried. Embarrassed that this had to happen to her and worried that her clothes would be damaged, or heaven forbid, destroyed. Well, they are called venatosa. Their species are notorious for doing things on their own and like to cause mischief to those who have the unfortunate in living close to them. Naruto says, surprising Bloom, Stella, and Flora with the info. Especially Flora since she thought no one aside from the staff and her would know a thing about plants. Whoa, that's right Naruto. How did you know that? Flora asks, generally curious on knowing how did the teenage boy know this. I garden a lot. It's a hobby of mine. Naruto says, surprising the girls further since Naruto didn't look like the type of guy who'd like to garden. Really? Flora asks, starting to feel joy. He nods and she smiles brightly, now feeling happy to know that there was someone else who gardens as well. Stella goes toward the two and grabs Flora by her shoulder and gives them a pledging expression. I don't care what they're known for, can you please make them stop? My clothes, my precious clothes. Stella begs, hoping that either of them knew how to make this stop. Bloom back at the plant and sees something it was taken from the closet. Is that, lingerie? Bloom asks, causing Stella to freeze, her eyes widen while the others look at where was this piece of clothing. Lo and behold, they spot a fancy-looking orange and yellow lingerie that the root that was rummaging through her closet was holding. What? Stella yells, she turns and instantly spots the root and the clothing in its hands. Roots? Whatever. She dashes toward it and grabs the piece of clothing and tosses it back into the closet and closes the door shut. She turns to the others and they turn away from her, whistling and looking at the ceiling. Stella bushes since she knew that they saw it and they'll eventually ask questions about it, but not now. Can you make them stop? I don't want any more of my secrets to being exposed. Someone catch me, I feel faint. Stella says, she places her hand on her forehead and dramatically falls toward Naruto, he catches her and holds her in his arms. I can, but I still don't get why you're making a big deal out of this. Tecna hasn't complained once about my plants. Flora says, she shoots a beam of magic at the plant and upon the beam hitting it, it froze momentarily before it slumps over, and falls asleep. She then walks out of Stella's room and heads into Musa's and Tecna's room where the music fairy was sitting in her bed, reading a levitating textbook. Hi, Musa. Have you seen Tecna by any chance? Flora asks, Musa just shakes her head not taking her focus from her book. Nope. I haven't seen her since this morning. Why? Musa asks, Flora moves into the room a bit and looks around. Are you guys having any trouble with my plants? Flora asks, looking for any sign of plants in trouble in the room. This surprises Musa as she looks up from her book. We have plants here. Musa asks, generally surprised since this was the first time she's heard of this. Flora moves toward one of their closets. Yes. I asked Tecna a couple of days ago if she could keep a few seeds in the dark inside of her closet. Flora says, looking at Musa as she opens the closet. She hears muffled grunting and mumbling from the closet, she turns and sees Tecna bound and gagged by vines inside of the closet. She had an unamused look on her face. Tecna! Flora yells, causing Musa to look up and see the closet and see what her roommate was in. The yell altered the others outside and they enter the room and see Tecna in her bonds. Acting fast, Naruto pulls out his katana and carefully cuts Tecna free while not harming the plant inside of the closet. Once her mouth was free, she coughs a bit before taking in sweet fresh air. Thank you Naruto, it was about time I got free. I just came here to look for some panties earlier but what I didn't expect was to get some benj from your DMN plants Flora. It grabbed me and pulled me into the closet and when I tried to fight it off but it tied me up and gagged my mouth so I couldn't call for help. I was in there for hours. Tecna yells out, Flora flinches as Tecna steps out of the closet and heads to her bed, Naruto following her and making sure she doesn't fall along the way. Stella turns to Musa. Musa, she was in there all morning and you didn't even notice. Stella says. I'm not the type of person who goes around and scoops into other people's closets. Unlike a certain someone, I know. Musa says glancing at Stella who just turns away from her and whistles. Okay. Just calm down, Tekna. It's not her fault. Tekna says to herself. She starts to calm down until her mind was level-headed. She turns to Flora. I want to know just what kind of seeds they were. She asks. Flora started to get a bit nervous as she looks. They were triple S-class seeds. Flora says, nervously giggling a bit as Tekna got mad while Naruto's eyes widen in shock upon hearing the class. Triple S-class. Tekna yells. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 6. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Pixel's fanbook on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.